years have witnessed the sound development of China-Colombia relations featuring political mutual trust and fruitful practical outcomes between the two sides. China-Colombia friendship has become a consensus shared by all sectors in the two countries. However, the rise of trade protectionism and turmoil in the Latin American political situation has also challenged China and Colombia. Meanwhile, profound changes are underway in Latin America and across the globe. So how should China and Colombia deepen bilateral exchanges in various fields and enhance trade relations? How does the new Colombia government, led by President Ivan Duque, resolve internal and external challenges? And what efforts can we make to promote the China-Latin America relations? To discuss these issues and more, today I will have an exclusive interview with Mr. Holmes Trujillo, Foreign Minister of the Republic of Colombia. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Welcome to Dialogue, Mr. Foreign Minister. What are the major issues on your agenda when you talk with your Chinese counterpart, Mr. Wang Yi, here in Beijing?
I am having a very wide agenda because the mutual interest in our relationship is quite diverse. So I came here to speak about politics, economics, trade, investment, about multilateralism and many other issues that are of common interest. But the point is that this is a very important relationship for Colombia, and I came to say that to the authorities and to get them the message that was sent by my President, Ivan Duque.
When we look at the economic partnership between China and other economies throughout the world, we look at the issue of mutual complementarity. In what areas do you think Colombia could help China, or the other way around, so that we would have a win-win situation economically?
I think in the food sector, in the fruits sector, in the agricultural sector as a whole, we have a great potential for this relationship to grow. This is an area that has a huge potential to grow and to deepen our mutual relationship.
Now, most Chinese who come to know your country for two things. One, unfortunately, is the drug cartel that captured headlines in much of the 1980s and the 90s. So we'd like to know whether the Chinese investment would have a sound and safe environment. Second is coffee. First of all, let's look at the investment environment in your country and the peace process, if you like.
Several things all together, so let me deal with them one by one. As far as peace, the policy of President Duque is implementing the agreement that was signed by the previous government with FARC, but implementing it with some modifications.
What do you mean by FARC? FARC is the name of the opposition?
FARC is the illegal armed group with which the former government signed a peace agreement. So, the stage today is the implementation of the agreement. And what is the policy of the new president, President Ivan Duque? To implement that agreement, but introducing some modifications to it. Secondly, as far as investment is concerned, my government is a business-friendly government. So we are opening up to new investments. We are building up more incentives, more attractive to foreign investors, more security in every sense. Thirdly, do potential Chinese investors can feel safe in Colombia? Of course they can feel safe, and the environment for investment is getting better and better due to the steps that are taken by President Ivan Duque. Fourth, as far as the fight against illicit drugs is concerned, that one of the main objectives of this government, Colombian government, is going out again to the United Nations to tell the world, hey, don't forget that this is a shared responsibility, and don't forget that the only way to be effective against the world drug problem is by attacking each and every single aspect of the criminal chain that leads to the illicit traffic of drugs. So that is our position as far as this is concerned.
One major hallmark of the Chinese foreign policy these days is the Belt and Road Initiative. However, given the mounting tensions between Washington and Beijing, China is accused of trying to rebuild the world order with what China considers a more inclusive world economic order. Now, most countries in Latin America and from the Caribbean have agreed to sign the memorandum on the BRI, except for Colombia. So, given the political will of the newly elected president of your country, the two economies are getting so close, but why does Colombia refuse to sign the memorandum?
No, we haven't refused. We are studying it, taking a very careful look, making some internal consultations, because this is such a huge and important initiative that we want to make our decision in the most deeply consulted way, for that decision to be strong internally, which is the only way to give that initiative, in our case, the proper development. Secondly, as far as the United States and China, we have very close historical relationship with the United States. We have had the bipartisan support in the States, and we are working together in many areas, in many aspects, and we are going to keep on working together in that sense. So that relationship is fundamental to us. In the relation with China, this is also a very important relationship to Colombia.
But do you have to take side should this standoff continue between the two biggest economies?
No need to take sides. Have
you ever been required by Washington to take sides?
No, not at all, not at all, not at all. We have a very pluralistic foreign policy, and we are going to keep on moving in that track. We are very supportive of multilateralism. We are sure that the multilateral organizations are fundamental in this global world. So, in order to face effectively global problems, we have to work out jointly global solutions. So, that is the way in which we develop our foreign policy.
What inspirations, if any, have you drawn from the new agreement that was inked between Canada, Mexico and the United States to replace NAFTA? Or what kind of uneasiness have you drawn from this new agreement, the brand new between the three governments, particularly with regard to the poison pill, which in its understatement actually refers to their transactions with the Chinese economy?
No, I think the main point is that the agreement was signed, because that gives way to a stronger trade relationship in our region as a whole. As a matter of fact, we have signed several trade agreements. We signed an agreement with Canada, we have an agreement with the United States, we have an agreement with the European Union, and several other agreements. So we are fond of free trade, we are fond of market economy, and we are working in that direction, and we'll keep on working in that direction, because we think that that is the only way to develop properly, in a stable way, which is at the same time the way to have better social policy, to create employment and to build equality.
Why Colombia has become a closest ally of the United States in Latin America? You've been involved in almost all the major conflicts that the United States led. You're actually the de facto member state of the NATO, despite the fact that Colombia is also a member of the non-aligned movement. Therefore, your government and the previous ones came under criticism, mild criticism from your neighboring countries for joining such organizations like the NATO.
You know, our relationship with the United States is a traditional relationship. We are close, we have a lot of values in common, we have some concerns, joint concerns that we want to address together, and we have a lot of opportunities, economic and trade and investment opportunities. As far as NATO is concerned, NATO is why did we become become a member of NATO in this condition? Because we have a lot to learn and a lot to share. We have learned the hard way. And that experience...
Well, by the way, Colombia is the second biggest military in the Organization of Americas, right?
Yes, and we have learned a lot.
Because of the anti-terrorism campaign, the anti-drug campaign?
We have had to combat terrorism. We have had to combat the narco-traffickers. So there are a lot of lessons that we have today that we also want to share with the international community. And joining NATO is one way to share that experience. About criticism, that's normal in a democratic world. It is a source of concern for us. The important point is that we joined it, that we were accepted, and that we are going to learn a lot from them, and we are going to share all that we have learned.
By the way, China has been a humble student ever since we started the reform and opening up 40 years ago. Mr. Foreign Minister, I also look at the border conflicts and the tensions between Venezuela and Colombia. President Maduro accused Colombia of supporting an assassination attempt which used a drone to attack him, but of course it came to no avail. Now, what do you think of a factor of ideology in shaping your foreign policy? Because that's said to be one of the major reasons why the United States assisted Colombia in fighting guerrilla warfare, and some of the armed forces in your country were actually influenced by the Cold War ideologically.
Let me go again point by point. We are members of the Organization of American States. That organization was founded in order to defend democracy in our hemisphere. The Charter of Bogota was signed in Colombia. We are signatories of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, which was signed with the same purpose, defending democracy in our hemisphere. So in the case in Venezuela, what are we doing? What we are doing is fulfilling the duties that we have in accordance with the Charter of the Organization of American States and in accordance with the Inter-American Democratic Charter. We have done that in the past with other countries. We are doing it today with Venezuela. We are going to do that tomorrow with any other countries. So what we are doing is fulfilling those duties, and we are telling the world and we are telling our region, we are going to do everything possible, politically and diplomatically, in order to create conditions that allow the brothers of Venezuela, the Venezuelan people, to get back to democracy and freedom. Now, what are we facing now? What we are facing now is a huge migration crisis coming from Venezuela.
How many refugees have escaped from Venezuela?
In Colombia?
Right. How many refugees from Venezuela have flown into your country, or flocked into your country?
According to some figures that I read recently, there are close to 3 million Venezuelans who have left their country. How many of them are in Colombia? 1,100,000. How big is the pendular migration? That is to say, migration that takes place daily. People coming into Colombia and going back to Venezuela, 40,000 daily. Out of those 40,000, how many go back to Venezuela? Close to 35,000, 36,000. What do the rest do? Some of them remain in Colombia, some of them go to other countries in the region. How many transit migrants we have seen going through Colombia to other countries? 700,000. How many Colombians have returned from Venezuela? Close to 400,000. What are we doing? We are acting very strongly internally in order to create conditions to attend them and to face this huge crisis, but we reached out the region to tell our region, hey guys, this is not only a Colombian situation, this is a regional situation. So let's work together through the harmonization of measures in order to face the migration crisis. But we went to the United Nations as well. And we told the Secretary General, hey, Mr. Secretary General, this is a global issue. Take into account that already we have in Colombia 1,100,000 Venezuelans. So I came here in the name of President Duque to ask you to appoint a high envoy, as you have done in other places of the world, in order for him to coordinate the multilateral action in our region. And he did that. And we are very grateful with him and with the United Nations system. And what are we doing now additionally? We are trying to build up a financial structure that allows us to face this huge crisis coming from Venezuela. When is that crisis going to be finished? When the internal situation in Venezuela changes. That is why we are going to keep on working very strongly with the Lima Group in order to help politically and diplomatically, let me repeat this, to create conditions that allow Venezuelans to live again in freedom and democracy.
Very quickly, what is the Lima Group?
Lima Group is a group of countries in our region that was set up in order to coordinate actions to help politically and diplomatically to create conditions in Venezuela that allow them to go back to freedom and democracy.
These 2 years, in Europe, for example, asylum seeking became a major challenge that may have contributed to the ouster of Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, from CDU. Having said this, with the close relationship between Colombia and the United States, one thing you cannot avoid is the presidency of Donald Trump, who vows to erect a war between Mexico and the United States to reject illegal immigration. Now, do you think borders should be closed between Venezuela and Colombia to learn from the US president? Because, you know, the flow of free movement of labor forces have forced some of the member states of the European Union to reconsider their commitments to the consensus that should be part of the groundwork for maintaining the integrity of the European Union. Do you think you are likely to follow suit?
Two different things. First, our relationship with the United States. As I mentioned before, that is a very close relationship. And we have many issues of common concern, which leads us to work together very closely as we are doing. Secondly, our position as far as immigration is concerned. I just came from Morocco, from Marrakesh, where the Migration Pact, World Pact, was adopted, and we adopted that compact. Why? Because we are sure that no one country can face the refugee situation alone. So, a cooperation scheme is needed in order to face together this global issue. Whenever you face a global issue, you have to work globally, and that is what the compact means. So that is our position as far as migration is concerned.
Thank you so much. You are watching Dialogue with Mr. Carlos Holmes Trujillo, the Foreign Minister of Colombia. We are honored to be able to interview him during his short stay in Beijing. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The rise of China will be happening at the cost of the U.S. demise. Is that the zero-sum game?
No, no one is winning or losing. This is not confrontation. This is a sound competition, and competition is okay.
What do you think of the influence of populism? Do you think they start to shape the future of the world?
What you see is the weakening of political parties. What you see is the emergence of a very wide movement of independent citizens. Why don't we propose just to see that phenomenon in an integral way?
Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
Let's look at the bilateral relationship. Despite the reputation an image of Colombia as a major economy in your region. At the same time, it seems that your country is rich in natural resources. Do you think this is the big opportunity for China? And do you think this is actually the most attractive prospect for the bilateral economic cooperation?
Yes, of course, no doubt about it. In fact, it has been one of the main sources of our very solid bilateral relationship. But there are many other opportunities. Renewable energies, for instance. One of the priorities of President Duque government is to get to have, during his 4-year terms, 1,500 megas of renewable energies. Now we have 60. So you can imagine the big step in which President Duque is thinking about. And that is a possibility to strengthen our relationship with China. There are many, many, many fields. But speaking about agriculture is not a minor thing. We are speaking here about how many inhabitants in China? 1,400 million inhabitants. We are speaking on the other side about a country who has the possibility to be one of the most productive countries as far as food production is concerned. So it's a complementarity. It's a complementarity of needs, and that is why we focus so much in the agricultural sector.
This year witnesses the 40th anniversary of China's opening up. What do you think of the roadmap of China's development, and what does that mean for the rest of the world? Will that cause a new Cold War, because no superpower would, give up the center stage of leadership?
No, I think the role of China in the world is going to be every day a more important role, in every sense, because of the population that China has, because of the economic development that China has reached, because of the place that China is playing today in the science, technology, and new developments as China is doing today. So I don't see any new Cold War. I don't see any new war in the world. This is a global world. We have to work together. There is no other way. There are a lot of global issues that have to be solved globally. Of course, every country, every society, historically, has differences, but at the end what prevails is the sense of working together, mainly taking into account the special features of today's world. That is why Colombia, for instance, believes so much in the multilateral institutions, and that is why we work so much in order to strengthen them. And the issue is very simple. To put it in one word, there are a lot of global problems that have to be solved globally as well.
Carlos, do you believe the rise of China will be happening at the cost of the U.S. demise? Is that the zero-sum game? Our gain is their loss?
No, no one is winning or losing. I think everybody is growing up. Everyone is developing their own potential. This is not confrontation. This is a sound competition, and competition is okay in every field of life. So what I see is growing possibilities, and when you see growing possibilities, there is more ample room to work together.
What do you think of the importance of digital technology for a major economy in the 21st century? Because we have relied on export and investment for the growth. Now we are looking for driving forces that may sustain the Chinese economic development. Innovation, digital technology will be used as a catalyst, will be used as a driving force.
Allow me to share with you the tenets of President Duque government: legality, entrepreneurship, equality, sustainability, and innovation. That is the word today. So every step that is taken in order to innovate, in order to put in motion new technological developments, is a welcome development for the world as a whole.
These years, look at the results of so many elections in democracies, the rise of far-right movement, protectionism, unilateralism start to characterize the dynamics of their local politics. And that won't do good to the process of globalization. Therefore, as a senior diplomat, if not a politician, with a strong legal background, what do you think of the influence of populism? Do you think they start to shape the future of the world?
I look at those developments from a different perspective. I think there are a lot of changes in the worldwide scenario. Technologies, new technologies, the communication technology, the impact that every single issue has on the whole society and on the world has led to a lot of changes politically in many countries around the world. So what I think that we have to do is to make a worldwide reflection about the direction that the principles that we have defended along the years are having today. I mean the impact of these new developments. Because what you see is the weakening of political parties. What you see is the emergence of a very wide movement of independent citizens that make decisions in different senses in every electoral processes. So there is a new citizenship, so to say. There is a new way to act. There is a new way to think. And there is a new way to make decisions in every country. And that leads to some particular movements nowadays. But I think the reflection has to be made in a much wider perspective. And we have been proposing that. I've been speaking with many of my colleagues in several countries, telling them, hey, why don't we propose a worldwide reflection about today's politics, just to see that phenomenon in an integral way. And I think we got to do that.
With the dynamics of protectionism, which is of course gathering momentum in many countries, the United States is no exception. What do you think of the future of the WTO? Now, China was admitted to the WTO in the year 2001, and our export surged, collecting a lot of forex reserves. So that became a big problem for the two biggest economies. And some in the West argue that China is no longer a developing country. Therefore, issues such as state subsidies and anti-dumping practices must be introduced to level the playing field. Now, we have a lot of issues to address regarding the reform of the WTO. What do you think of, the issue of multilateralism and the future of WTO?
I believe in free trade. I believe in open economies. I believe in the need of a worldwide framework to face the trade issues. So WTO is a necessary structure, and some adjustments has to be made because things changes. There are new phenomena, and whenever a new phenomenon takes place, it's better to adjust the structures that were built up in order to face them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much
I appreciate
for this opportunity.